One of the words that I think gets thrown around far too much is toxic. Hey, this is D. Still in Santa Fe, but just having some things I'd like to talk about. Toxic is used a lot these days. It's a toxic person, toxic relationship, toxic society, toxic. It's a term we seem to throw out there as something that's negative in your life. That's really what we're talking about, something that's negative in your life. And I get that. I think there's some wisdom to avoiding toxic people or toxic relationships, but I also think we use it as an excuse sometimes. And I think one of the key things of this new podcast, one of the things I'm going to fall back on a lot, is balance. Finding balance in our lives. I am a big believer in moderation. I'm a big believer in balance. I'm politically independent. I've never picked a political party. I'm this middle of the road guy. I'm the guy that's always in the gray. There's people who are black or white, and I can always see the gray and it drives my wife nuts. She can ask a question that, is going to be, a black or white response. And I say, well, yeah, but what about in this scenario? And maybe you all can relate. I don't know. For me, I have ADHD and a hyperactive mind. I have anxiety, which creates a lot of thinking, and I overthink everything. So if somebody asked me, is it wrong to kill somebody? Well, somebody would quickly answer that and say yes. Now, some people might say no. For me, I'm always thinking about, okay, well, what's the scenario? What's the specific scenario here? Is somebody pointing a gun at my wife and I have a gun in my hand? Yeah, I'm going to shoot that person and probably kill them. Self-defense, defense of my family. Yeah, that I do believe is okay. I'm going to protect my family. That's something I'm going to do to the best of my ability. I'm going to protect my own life if it comes down to that. So does that count? And what else counts? When you say cannot kill somebody, you bring up other things like the death penalty or abortion, depending on your views on that. I'm not picking a side here. Trust me, I'm not about to touch that one. But I'm just saying it's one of those things that, people bring up in those conversations. And so it's some things that seem so simple, rarely are. And I overthink things. And some people, I'm sure, some of you are probably thinking, well, that's just, there is black and white, and there is absolutes, and there are absolute good and bad. And I get that. I'm not saying there's not, but I don't think there's as much of that as many of us think there is or say there is. What was I talking about? But it comes back to balance, and one of the things is finding balance in our lives about, what we're doing and who we're with and who we spend time with, and that comes back to this toxic category. And I hear this from a lot of people. Some people I'm not going to specify, but based on family and friends, there are definitely people who use that term quite often and are often relatively lonely because they have a habit of writing off toxic people. The thing I almost never hear is saying, well, I don't see that person anymore because I'm toxic. You don't hear that much. You don't hear people calling themselves toxic very often, and yet the odds are we are toxic to somebody else. I will bet every one of us has been toxic, whatever that word is and whatever you want to mean by it, to someone else. It's just the odds. It's just the statistics, how it works out. We piss some other people off. We've been negative, and I guarantee you there are people who have avoided being with me because maybe it was somebody that maybe because I talk too much. I mean, I got so many flaws. I could just go on and on and on. But, pick one of those flaws and somebody probably doesn't want to be around me. And that's okay. My God, can you imagine if we actually tried to be a friend with everybody? It's not going to work. There are people who seem to want to be around me. My wife, which is my best friend, my wife's family, my family, other people, and my neighbors and stuff. There are people who seem to like to spend some time with me. I'm very grateful for that. I'm very grateful for that. But I'm sure there's people out there who also believe I'm not that great to be around. I'm toxic. But I do think it's something we use, and everything can go to an extreme. Everything. And that's the thing I have trouble with a lot of the causes and stuff and activism and all that kind of stuff, because it can be good for a while, but we can always take it too far, and we don't seem to know when to stop. And I think labeling things as toxic is one of those things. You know, when you label all masculinity as toxic, no offense, but that really gets under my skin, because I'm a man and I'm inherently masculine. So you're telling me that inherently I'm toxic, and I don't agree with that. If I said, the opposite, that all women or femininity was toxic, it wouldn't go well. So I don't believe that we are toxic. I believe there are men who are extremely masculine and don't treat people very well, just as there are women who don't treat people very well. Why does this have to be, I don't know. I'm not trying to get into that. But I do think we seem to use the term too often when we're dealing with people to write them off. Oh, well, they don't believe this, so I can't be with them. He's a Christian, and I can't be with anybody that would be that, distorted in their thinking that they should believe in a supreme being and the Bible. And for somebody who doesn't, an atheist or something, they're going to see that person that way. Or somebody who's a different political party, or somebody who, is just all these different traits that we find annoying, too clingy, or the opposite. We find a lot of things and use a lot of things. I have people in my family who have written off other people in my family. And my wife has people like that in her family. I can't tell you the number of people in our families combined who aren't talking to somebody else in the family, and sometimes for years. I don't get that. Now, sometimes that comes from some serious thing that happened. Maybe it was from a trauma, maybe it was from abuse, maybe it was from something else. But most of the time, that's not it. And I'll tell you, the one place that I've seen this happen more often than any place else is the death of a loved one. When dealing with an estate, or dealing with funeral plans, or dealing with anything, say a brother and a sister lose their parent, I can't tell you the number of times I've seen relationships just dissolve, totally fall apart around that. It is such a heightened emotional time. And I've read books about this, and it does seem to happen quite often. But also then there's an estate to deal with, there's finances, people don't feel like they've been treated well by the parents or what they left for them. They feel like somebody else is doing more or getting more. There's just all these things that happen. And I've been through a lot of these lately. When my parents died, the one thing I made sure was more important than anything else was that I retained my relationship with my sister. That was number one, above everything else. And we worked hard trying to resolve anything. And there were little things that bugged me, and little things with her, I'm sure, that bugged her. But we didn't let that stop us. And I'm very proud of my sister, and I'm proud of myself, that we retained our relationship throughout the whole process with my mom and my dad. And there was a lot to deal with. I'm not saying that's easy for everybody, but I'm amazed how easily we say, I don't want that person in my life anymore. Because trust me, I'm a little older than some of you, maybe a little younger than some of you, but I'm a little older now, and there are less people there, especially in the family that are around. We don't have kids of our own, so that does limit who we have around. And losing my parents and losing I lost two cousins, two parents, and other people I know to COVID and to recent things, and you start to see people thinning out. You start to see your friends, your family thinning out, and makes me that much more grateful for my wife, for my friends, for my wife's family who have accepted me and spend time with me, and I appreciate that. Do I get along with all of them? No, not great, but most of them. Do we say things and complain about them? Absolutely. This is what people in relationships do, and I should do less of that, and I know that, and I'm trying to. But when it comes down to getting together with them, we usually do because it's a social outlet. It's family, it's friends, it's people to be around. I just think there's a good lesson here of being careful of writing people off. Being careful of calling people or relationships toxic. I'm not saying there aren't people like that. I'm not saying there aren't relationships like that. But I do think it's an easy out. And maybe we should communicate a little better. Maybe we should find ways of working through things a little better. I don't know. That was my soapbox for the day. I'll be getting on some soapboxes on this, and you can comment till the cows come home as much as you want to let me know that you disagree with me, and I'm okay with that. I will be checking comments periodically, and and hopefully other people will too, and we'll see what happens. But this has been a good trip for me, and it's brought up a lot of things. I think this morning was maybe the ultimate goal of this trip. I got really comfortable at home. I got really stayed. I got really settled, and I wasn't happy. I was mildly depressed, but I wasn't also pushed to limits. And I got to go do a bunch of things that I like to do and had some fun, but I also had to push myself every single day. And it elevated the anxiety, and it elevated my stress, and it showed me I can do it, and I got through it, and I found a way to get here and drive and get home. But it also showed me that sometimes all that reaches a pinnacle, and you gotta reach that pinnacle. You gotta push it to get to that level sometimes, so that you can really, just let it all out. And that's what I did this morning. And it was good. And I felt a little bit better. I felt better throughout the day. And I can't wait to get home. Well, that's it on toxic relationships and toxic people. I'm going to get back to the Buffalo and Pittsburgh game. And I will talk to you shortly. Hey, this is Dee. Thank you so much for stopping by and checking out our podcast. I do need to remind everyone that this podcast is for informational purposes only and should never be considered medical, psychological, or professional health advice of any kind. If you or someone you know is dealing with significant mental health issues, please seek professional help. Resources can be found in our show notes and on our website at unevenpodcast.com. Take care of yourself, and I'll catch you on the flip side.